Before we jump into today's episode, I want to give a huge shout out to our first ever How I Doctor podcast sponsor, Abridge. Abridge is the leading AI platform that drafts structured, clinically useful notes at the point of conversation. Clinicians remain in full control because they review and finalize every note. With Abridge, many clinicians report reclaiming time and reducing their documentation burden, myself included. I've been using Abridge in my role as a practicing emergency physician in San Francisco, and clinicians who use it report up to an 86% reduction in effort writing notes, a 78% reduction in cognitive load, and 70% decrease in after-hours documentation. The company was also founded by a physician and is completely dedicated to empowering clinicians, which is what makes them the perfect first sponsor for How I Doctor. If you aren't yet using Abridge, inquire with your IT department today or reach out at abridge.com/contact. Thank you, and now let's get to today's episode.
If you look at the study from last week from Health Tech Without Borders, the Harvard spin out, they were one of just 2 medical references that had a positive user satisfaction. They have this NPS score.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And it's up to date in us. And we're both like over 50, which is like the really high rating. And every other medical reference is less than 0. I think that speaks to the moving slowly and thoughtfully and not breaking things is really
for sure.
important. Not that all the other companies did that, but that trust factor is so critical.
Welcome to How I Doctor, where we're bringing joy back to medicine. This year marks 20 years of MDCalc. What started as a little side project I built during med school has grown into one of the most widely used medical references in the world. But I did not build it alone. About 5 years in, I teamed up with my friend and former co-resident, Dr. Joe Haboush, and we've been building it together ever since. Joe's an emergency physician like me, but he's also a math nerd in the best sense, a sharp, strategic thinker, and a relentless advocate for evidence-based medicine. We complement each other really well, not identical perspectives, but aligned in our obsession with making MDCalc accurate, ethical, and truly useful for our physician colleagues. This conversation is especially meaningful to me for 2 reasons. First, while I've interviewed other friends and colleagues before on the podcast, none of them really know me as well as Joe does. And second, a national survey just came out naming MDCalc as the number 2 most used reference by doctors in the US and the world. I'm excited to get Joe on the mic because while he is actually the extrovert between us, I'm usually the one posting things online, and he deserves so much of the credit. Welcome to the show, Dr. Joe Haboush.
Thank you so much, Graham. You said that so well. I can't believe MDCalc is 20 years old.
Joe, let's talk about the spark, the idea. You and I first met in residency. You were a year ahead of me. And then when you were already attending and I was just finishing residency, you jumped into MDCalc with me. I don't think I've actually really ever asked you this, but what made you want to get involved? What did you see that you thought like, oh, this, I think the thing you told me was like, I think this could be a really big thing.
Yeah. The way I tell the story is, look, I'm a kid of like immigrant physicians. It's not an atypical story. My parents had to escape Iraq at the time physicians were not allowed to leave. My mother's a 6th-generation physician.
Wow, still
herself,
practicing.
Still practice. 86-year-old pediatrician in Philly. Broke some ceilings as a woman doctor in Iraq in the 60s. But I grew up as a math nerd. Actually, I was not pre-med. And so when I ended up sort of wrestling with it, I want to do something mathy, or do I want to work go into healthcare? And actually, my girlfriend at the time was trying to go from business into medicine. And she said, I can't believe you're graduating med school and not doing residency. I saw through her eyes, matched in residency. And, I'd say like a year later, when you came in, when we first got to know each other.
You were a second year. I was a brand new intern.
Yeah. And we were working a shift together. It's like, oh, MDCalc, I've actually used that site. It was already started. It was early days.
It was early. It was very
but
early.
It was starting to gain traction. I was like, wow, this guy's making math plus medicine. And it's a problem that we know we need to fix, or there's ways we can address it. And hey, if we do this well, this idea of these clinical tools that are making sort of slightly better decisions, helping doctors make slightly better decisions for their patients. If we can help doctors use them a little bit better, we can really help patients, and maybe we can sort of help usher in more of these things. So just to me, it was like, God, this guy's building something that I was built for, math and medicine and a bigger, and it took me a little bit of time to come around, and I guess also to see MDCalc like, oh, it actually works and people are using this thing. And I said, okay, like there might be only 40 or whatever tools at the time when we were finishing residency, but already this was helping doctors use those tools. To me, it was like, God, this was just the tip of the iceberg of how much we could affect medicine and all the things I wanted to work on. So that's why I tried to convince you. I did convince you to team up.
Well, I mean, I think you also made me take it a lot more seriously. And you also always have like, I think, a plan and a framework, whereas I'm much more, maybe a little less organized. But like you were like, okay, if we want to get to whatever it is, 200 calculators, how will we get there and work backwards? I think that's the other thing that you're really good at is like see where we want to get, and then like what's the path? Like what's the Google Maps way? How do we actually get there?
Right. I think what you have that's so amazing is you really had already started capturing what to me was sort of like was obvious when I looked at it, which is that doctors don't love math, and we were making math very approachable for them. And and you were already doing this, and I think we put our heads together and we made it even better. But we did it in a way that was not trying to get doctors to outsource to these tools, but to try to make it approachable enough so they wouldn't be intimidated by them, so they'd actually learn enough.
Yeah,
and knowing that they're not the math nerds that we are. Always, some are, but to embrace it and you hit it on the head so well, especially for the first pass. I was like, God, we if we like just continue making this better, this doesn't have to be. I mean, as great, as many people was using it, it was just, it was younger docs in a few academic centers and a few specialties. We could really expand this across. This is a way to make medicine better.
Let's talk about the particularly scrappy years, like 2011, 2012, 2013, when you and I first started working together. MDCalc was growing, but it was all organic. It was all word of mouth, some Google SEO. Why do you think clinicians trusted MDCalc so quickly when clinicians usually ignore most of the stuff that people try to give them?
I think we were just trying to solve a problem that we knew was a problem, right? In a very honest way. And we were just on the front lines and seeing how people use them. So we were just like, oh, well, we could like iterate. I mean, we already in residency, we were doing it. Like, oh, here's a new tool. Someone's asking me about it. Like, let's figure out how to iterate and add them and say it this way, say it that way.
Yeah. I mean, you and I were both working, I think, almost full-time clinically while we were kind of scrappy trying to grow it. We grew it organically. We didn't raise outside money, which I think would sound kind of crazy to people today. But back in 2011, we were just like, oh yeah, let's just go score by score and add it and start adding additional features. We had to really invent our own playbook, I think. I mean, honestly, it was you who invented the playbook.
I think we both did, but what I'd also note is that there was a bunch of other apps and sites that were doing this, and more so in some ways than today. And what I think I'm really proud that we both did, and everyone we worked with, I mean, it's honestly not just us, it's like all the people writing these scores and coming in, is that we sort of kept on trying to always figure out how to make it a little bit better, not like being, just putting the score up there wasn't enough. Like at some point we said, okay, we need to get really thoughtful contributors to come in and write the content around the tools and get that right balance of concise versus comprehensive, and how to teach the doctor and these tabs of information on the tool. I remember at a time we were talking, like it felt impossible that anyone would want to write for MDCalc. Now it's like a great way for folks to get their names out there.
Yeah.
Or even when we first started approaching the folks who'd done the research behind the tools, right? Dr. Wells or whomever.
Yeah.
And it felt also like, how would they ever want to talk to us,
partner with us, talk to us,
or sit on our advisory board and all the things that come for granted now. And I really liked how we weren't like settling. Okay, even when we did sort of rise up to be the main place, we just continued to say like, how can we make this thing better? How do we how do we like help more doctors, help more patients? And by having a goal of that, instead of how do we become the best for us, but how do we become the best for our patients, or how do we help our doctors become the best for their patients? Like, then there's no limit. You have to keep on working like relentlessly. And I think that that mattered more than raising money, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think always the focus was like, how do we help our colleagues and honestly help ourselves? How do we,
Yeah.
what would we want in a tool to help us take better care of our patients? And you certainly had the idea like, oh, we should be adding content for every single score. Like we should be finding, what are the things that would make it even easier for me to use this tool or trust it more, or like you said before, like make the math less intimidating,
Right.
so that I feel like I have enough knowledge to use this thing and not feel like I'm kind of being risky or cavalier with how I'm, managing patients.
Yeah, that's really well put.
Hey, today's episode is brought to you by Abridge. We all feel the weight of clinical documentation that follows us home and chips away at our personal time. With Abridge, clinicians can change that. Abridge drafts a structured, clinically useful note at the point of conversation, all seamlessly integrated into Epic and customizable to your specialty while you review and finalize every word. Clinicians have reported significantly less after-hours charting, improved satisfaction, and dramatically lower burnout. Let technology support your day instead of interrupting it. Visit abridge.com to learn how you can focus more on patient care and less on paperwork. Let's put the care back in clinical care. We did slow and deliberate instead of move fast and break things. Today, I think most people would, especially with, kind of health tech investing right now, I think a lot of people would say maybe that's the wrong approach, or it's going to be too slow. But let's flip the script a bit. What do you think we gained from that slow and steady, like let's just every day make things a little bit better approach?
I think we gave ourselves permission not to think of ourselves as a company that's supposed to do those things, and we weren't governed by those rules. I would argue like just focus on the rules that made sense to us, which was like how do we make this thing awesome? And moving fast and breaking things is not a good idea in our field. I mean, maybe in other fields, I don't know, but like when you're taking care of patients or helping doctors take care of patients, I mean, especially today. I mean, talk about all this new technology. I mean, it has so much potential and so many pitfalls. And there's a lot of companies that aren't thinking about, or maybe they're thinking about it. They're just taking the other playbook. And I think that's not us. It's never been us. Yeah.
I saw somebody say, well, we might have to move fast and break things. And I thought like, oh, I don't even like that. Like the idea that might break things is a potential option that may be an outcome. I think you'd probably agree that doesn't feel like an acceptable chance. Like that, well, it might happen. No, I don't think that's the way to certainly gain physician trust. I don't think it's an ethical way to do healthcare. You have to be laser focused and confident that breaking things is not it's not a part of the roadmap. Yeah.
Not acceptable. Totally. And when you take a step back, it's almost obvious, but it's actually, I think, really hard to do in practice to keep the North Star of none of us are doing any of this except to help doctors help patients. Everything across healthcare, it's about helping our patient. And if we, like the moment we forget that, we lose, I think. And if we can, and it's so easy to say and hard to do, but if everyone in this entire industry, if that's not what you're thinking about, then it's not the right industry.
I recently mentioned on social media that like I got this email from a Thai surgeon, and that was the moment that I was like, oh damn, this is like a legit thing. Did you have a moment like once you and I had teamed up where, maybe we hit some analytics number or something happened that you were like, oh my God, I was right. This is a real thing.
I remember there was this year that some of the people who were doing the research, and it was like multiple people came out within the same like month or two in this community, maybe I just started noticing it more. Yeah. And they told us, I am encouraged to do what I do, doing the research to build, to do tools, because I know MDCalc helps bring it to the patient.
Yeah.
And I was like, something that I didn't actually think about is that us helping bring these tools that exist to the bedside and used correctly actually increases how many folks will be building those tools.
Yes.
And encourage them to do their job better. I did not think about that. And I thought that was like such a surprising, amazing, like societal benefit that came out of like our efforts. And it really was like, to me, very motivating to like, all right, how do we keep on doing this? How do we get more people excited about building better evidence-based medicine that's good for the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to help be the conduit for research to get used with good research to get used by patients. That, researchers don't want their stuff to just sit on a PDF server and be cited by other researchers. They want them to be used in the good of medicine and humanity and solving problems better.
And Graham, I don't think we knew about this when we were doing it, but we were creating standards. We were saying, okay, you have to be, we're not going to publish it until it's, and then, now still, like, every week someone's reaching out to us saying, are we good enough for MDCalc yet? Oh, well, you have to hit, so we're creating standards that are encouraging
higher quality research.
Yeah. A huge benefit of this that I would never expected. I mean, if you look at the study from last week from Health Tech Without Borders, the Harvard spin out, we're one of just 2 medical references that had a positive user satisfaction. They have this NPS score.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And it's up to date in us, and we're both like over 50, which is like in the really high rating. And every other medical reference is less than 0. I think that speaks to the moving slowly and thoughtfully and not breaking things is really
for sure.
important. Not that all the other companies did that, but that trust factor is so critical.
How do you talk about MDCalc to like non-clinicians? Because I certainly have my way that I kind of like the elevator pitch or the explanation, but like, how do you explain why physicians use these tools?
God, I think it's so interesting how the assumptions about what MDCalc is when you're a clinicians who practice might know MDCalc and the flavor of tools we have, and it's sort of obvious to them. But when you talk to non-physicians, there are often a few assumptions. One is that it's like a pure equation all the time, and there are obviously calculators in MDCalc, but a lot of them are clinical tools and stuff.
Algebra.
Not straightforward math.
Yeah.
Right. Number 2 is that you outsource to it. And I think a lot of researchers get this wrong. You see these published papers that say such and such tool versus gestalt. And I cringe when I see that, because that's like, it's wholly missing the point. These tools aren't supposed to be against clinical judgment. It's supposed to be used with clinical judgment to increase it. And they totally, and the studies often show that they aren't as good as clinical judgment. And of course they aren't. They fail when you try to use it that way. So that's another thing that I think non-doctors assume. But what we're able to do with these tools, especially because we're able to reduce the sort of friction and how intimidating they are to the non-mathy doctor, is to have a little bit more evidence-based structure into something that can't be purely solved with evidence-based medicine, frankly. I mean, evidence-based medicine is a blunt tool of populations that has a lot of pitfalls, but at least it has a certain amount of objectivity that a clinician can incorporate into their judgment. And I think it's really valuable and I think doctors know that it's valuable, especially now. Most doctors who are even mid-career or before have trained in this era of these tools.
Joe, I wrote down that MDCalc's DNA is safe, fast, trusted. Is that good? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's great. Approachable.
Yeah. And it's like, it's at the right levels. Can you think of a time when maybe those values guided us to say no to something? I mean, I feel like I'm always like, Joe, we should do all these partnerships. And you're very wisely like, well, let's think about it, Graham.
Yeah. The way I see it is we're so focused on our North Star and our values. And so when we do a partnership, we want someone with that same flavor, like medical society partnerships or the right kind of organization that's really focused on that and not moving fast and breaking things. Also partnerships.
Yeah, that's a great, the medical society partnerships is a great example of like, not necessarily research, but is a way to help get evidence and standards in front of physicians better.
Exactly. And working with folks with a similar point of view, it's very clear that we're all here to make our field better, so that we can help doctors help patients. Getting tapped by Operation Warp Speed, that was really cool. initially secret project. And
I don't think we've really told many people. Yeah, we had a meeting with Fauci. That was pretty cool.
That was really cool. Yeah, and launching tools during COVID. And that was in a period. That's actually a good answer.
Yeah.
To the beginning of COVID when research had to move faster than research moves. It's to the moving fast.
That is a perfect example.
Yeah. And we felt pressure. There's all these groups making COVID tools. Machine learning was a little bit more in medicine at that point. And there's pressure to launch a lot of these tools. And obviously, in general research, there's a lot of pressure to come out with stuff. And now we have people who misunderstand what medications work in COVID, and groups of the population still believe it, even though it's been disproven because initial research came out, arguably. And I think we did a pretty good job of not moving. Maybe we moved the bar a little bit, but we moved it a lot less, I think, than most folks in medicine. And I think that was hard to do at the time.
I think that first year of COVID, March 2020 to 2021, I think was particularly challenging. I mean, I'll also call out, Joe, that you live in New York City. And so you and I were texting and talking almost every day about just what was happening in New York City at the time. And I remember us texting about hydroxychloroquine and all these different things. And it was a sense of both like, how do we help? We have this resource that can help, but how do we help right? Because we know if it gets on the site, people are going to use it. I remember I talked to an Italian anesthesiologist that had helped to come up with their remember the northern Italian like big surge of patients, and they were coming up with a protocol for who got a ventilator, who got steroids. This whole maybe it wasn't even steroids, because it was such a chaotic time for what is normally a slow and steady game of information release and data review in medicine.
Week by week. Yeah, we got that. Yeah. We got that chunk of data out of Korea, because there was like China and then Korea, and Korea had a little bit more reliable data. I remember this. Yeah. We analyzed it and put it on the site. It wasn't clinical tools yet, but it was, really clearly revealing of how much age was a factor and like the risk factors of it all. And then that Italian protocol. Oh, wow. Every week was different. And we were both going and seeing patients. I remember I would go to the ER. My now wife and I were working in the ER together, and we took care of a colleague of mine came in. We diagnosed him perfectly. Right. Yeah. He died a couple of days later. One of our residency friends' uncle came in. She called me. I took care of him. All these patients who we stabilized and they just would still not make it. It was so psychologically like what a period of time we lived through.
Well, Joe, let's maybe instead of looking back, look forward now. Someone who thinks strategically about execution and medicine. I think you've got a unique lens on AI. What excites you about AI, and what worries you if it's done wrong?
I mean, I grew up when AI was in movies and it felt not ever possible. So it kind of blows my mind we're in this period of time where we have these things that sort of act a little bit like humans, and then you realize that they don't really. Yeah. And I think that's kind of an interesting...
It's a little bit like Uncanny Valley, a little bit, that they get a lot of the way there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's also some people who they'll enter a room and they will speak with such presence and such confidence that a lot of people are listening to them, and then you realize wait, I'm not sure that they seem to know that they're doing it sometimes, but sometimes they don't. I kind of feel like that AI is a little bit like that sometimes, right?
It's intentionally very confident.
Yeah,
it's intentionally very complimentary.
Yes.
I've kind of likened it to like a really good sub-I or a really good intern, but who just they kind of haven't been burned yet, or they haven't made a mistake, or they're a little big for their britches, if that's still a term.
Oh my God, it is. I feel like I've only worked in academic settings, so I've had the pleasure of being able to work with med students.
You've seen hundreds of interns.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And I think everyone, and I remember when I went through the process of I felt like I didn't know anything. And then there was some period later, not that long later, that I felt like I knew everything. And like you're saying, you know enough. and there's people who are like below you in the path, so you feel confident, but you hadn't been burned yet. And so then you have these attendings who are being more conservative in some way or what have you, and you're like, you think you know better than them. They're like the old timers who don't understand how things are done.
Yeah.
And I went through that curve for sure, and I got
we all do.
overconfident, and I can't.
Yeah.
And I think I see so many people going through that, and I think you're right. AI kind of sounds like that. And I would add to that, AI combined with someone like that, it can be like a particularly dangerous moment. Because those patients, those are the residents who I think are the most dangerous, maybe.
That you have to watch closely.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, I know it's better than anyone else. And they haven't yet been humbled. And most people go through some version of that curve. I think that's an area that I get concerned.
It is, it is interesting. Like getting humbled is like a thing in medicine. And it almost feels like it's a phase and it has to happen to you in order for you to become a better physician almost.
Yeah.
Like you got to get your butt handed to you to some degree and be humbled by the immense resilience and the immense weakness of human biology, honestly.
Yes.
And
the mystery of it, like how much we don't know and how much of it's partially luck. I mean, it is humbling. And if you're not being humbled, it makes me nervous, right? Like we should be feeling humility to this like amazing things that we are and we don't understand, So
yeah, like when I hear the whole like AI is smarter than the best doctor thing, for some of the easy cases, maybe it is. But I think if you going through a residency and being an attending, you see stuff that gets burned into your brain that still, like to your point about mystery, it does not make sense. Yeah. Like I had a colleague who had a patient many years ago who came in with like, I think like right hip pain or something. She was dead in 2 hours of like strep sepsis. Like, and she came in saying she didn't sleep on her right side well and she had some hip pain. And so I think like, when you hear that stuff about AI, you're like, God, you just don't get the diversity and the variance of the human condition almost. I don't know.
I couldn't agree more.
Curious if you have thoughts on like where you see MDCalc's role in the next decade with AI entering the picture. Obviously it's not just we call it a calculator. We call the tools calcs, but they're obviously more than calcs. There's diagnostic criteria and there's guidelines and stuff like that. Where do you have a sense for where you see MDCalc in the future?
Yeah, I love this last study and how it showed that we're both very well trusted and very well used in medicine. And I think that gives us this really amazing opportunity and responsibility to lead in a thoughtful way. AI really came out when my daughter was born.
Yeah.
And she was a NICU baby. She's a little sick up front. And I remember not sleeping well during those weeks. And
yeah, that was
talking to
and you and I were talking. Those were some very rough weeks. Yeah.
Oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, what are the robots coming? But I remember you did something incredible then. You said, hey, we are going to lead. And we're going to take this thing that we built and the trust that we have across the world in medicine to make things safe, but also powerful with AI. And the next thing we did, totally your concept, was to build the Physician's Charter. You built, really, which is the Physician's Charter and Responsible AI. So a bunch of thoughtful physicians who care about AI and care about the North Star that we agree on, trying to start creating guardrails.
I mean, I think it's funny because looking back, I always feel like you were really scared and I was trying to reassure you and make you feel better. But if I'm honest, I feel like part of the reason I wrote the Physician Charter as well and then asked like MDCalc to sponsor it was like, I was actually probably kind of scared too that like ChatGPT would have taken over within a year. And so like, we need to do this as fast as possible because, we're all hosed if we don't do this immediately. And, obviously AI is, absolutely a part of daily life for many people, but it hasn't gone at the pace that I was scared of.
It's
And I
not like
kind of
a horror movie from the 90s.
yeah, exactly.
That we grew up on, right?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
you know what? I think we're built to think about worst case scenarios, especially as emergency doctors and as folks running a big medical reference. We should be constantly thinking about what can go wrong.
Yeah.
How could this be misinterpreted? If we're not doing that, we're not doing our job. So I think that was that on steroids for at least a few months. Yeah.
Joe, I know a lot of people who are just starting out. Maybe they're in med school or they're residents right now. They want to do something like you and I did. They want to found something, create something. I mean, to your point earlier, they want to do something that's kind of bigger. What have you learned from building MDCalc that you'd want other physicians to know if they feel that itch?
The first thing I like to point out is that, and this happens with also like choosing specialties in medicine, is that there's a few things that the world is like really excited about that everyone's like aiming to be. It's like the casino effect. You walk into a casino and you hear the people who are winning, and then you think everyone's just winning, but it's where your head goes. So back when I was in med school and business school, especially business school, no one in business school wants to be an entrepreneur. Everyone wants to go into private equity and venture capital. That's where the shiny thing is. That's not how it is now. You go to business school, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur because it shifted that way. And I think about that with like residency, like specialties. Like when I was in med school, where I had gone emergency medicine, it was too early on, and it was kind of looked down upon still. And then a few years later, everyone wanted to be an emergency doc. I'm glad because I almost did that. Actually, I almost went into private equity and venture capital. I had job offers to like lucrative job offers, and I ended up being an intern instead. And I'm really glad I did that because I actually didn't want to do that. And then I met you, and I realized like I want to build myself. And number one is make sure you like really like spend the time to figure out what you want to do, and not just like aim for that big thing. And I think that's what's really important early on, is just looking around at a lot of different options. And I don't know, what would you say? What do you tell them? You're answering these questions like weekly, right?
Honestly, the main thing I tell people is find someone that complements you. I think the benefit of having a second brain that like bounces ideas off you and you bounce ideas off them. And like, anytime you and I are on the phone together, we always come up with better ideas than either of us individually. So I think the co-founder thing helps. And I say that specifically for people in medicine because I think it is, you do kind of have to pick. You have to pick, are you going to go through residency? Like, I don't think you can half-ass residency. You have to be committed to it and do it. If you're, but you get on the other side, you get the benefit of all the subject matter expertise of being the doctor at the end of the day. So I think that the co-founder thing I think has been really important. Looking back, what's been the most meaningful thing for you in building MDCalc, reaching millions of clinicians?
Literally, Graham, millions of doctors around the world use MDCalc to take care of hundreds of millions of patients. I'm like, wow, we never meant to do that. It's crazy.
Yeah,
we changed the standards in some ways. And and I say we, it's not like, it's actually like, what I think we did really well is keeping a really broad umbrella and in asking everyone to become part of it. All these academics, all these physician writers, all the physicians themselves, partnering with medical societies. It wasn't, it was just like, can we build this community that can do these great things? And then I'm like, whoa, what can we do now with this new technology? And what can we do tomorrow? And it just feels like we are in such a great position to work with really smart people to help do more good for people. I don't know. I'm like, I feel so lucky that I get to be part of this really cool thing.
Yeah, it's a thing that, like you said, it's not just us or our team. It's the advisory board, and it's the users that email us ideas for new scores, and people that write content and support it and want to really like help make this thing better because they know it's in a lot of people's pockets and people are using it. Joe, last question.
Yeah,
if you could go back to 2011. We've just started working together and whisper one thing into our ears about MDCalc's future. What do you think you would tell much younger Joe and Graham? I'll tell you my answer. I would say go for it and build out the platform and the app. I mean, I think I particularly was like hesitant for us to do an iPhone app and an Android app because I was like, I don't know how to program those. I think for me it would be like, hey, Graham, be a little bit more confident and trusting that we'll figure this out because what you're building will
matter.
work.
Yeah.
Will matter.
Yeah,
So.
totally. I think I was always maybe a little bit more like, let's build those things, maybe. But I
Totally,
still,
yeah.
but as much as I could try to imagine how big we could get, it's still like I think that it's that same lesson. I think like this can be even bigger than maybe you imagine if you just like step by step, right?
I remember we had that little like thermometer thing. I think we were going to try to hit like 1,000 like iPhone users or something like that. Remember?
Oh my God.
And then
we launched the app and it was like 1,000 per day.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was like so rapidly.
Well, Joe, totally a special honor to get to talk with you and interview you.
So fun.
For all that we've built together. So thank you for talking with me today on How I Doctor.
No, thank you for being such a close friend and colleague and for building this thing together. It's so fun. I can't wait for all that's in front of us.
Thanks for joining me today. For interviews with physicians creating meaningful change, check out offcall.com/podcast. You can find How I Doctor on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll have new episodes weekly. This has been and continues to be Dr. Graham Walker. Stay well, stay inspired, and practice with purpose.